The cave system stretched deep into the mountainside of Hesperides Prime, a forgotten wound in the planet's crust that had existed long before human colonists arrived. In the deepest chamber, where darkness pressed against itself and the air tasted of ancient stone, something stirred. Velcareth raised her massive head from where it had rested for 3 decades. Her scales, once brilliant crimson, had faded to the color of old blood and rust. She was tired, so very tired, the last of her kind in this sector of space. She had chosen this remote world to wait for death in peace. But something had disturbed her rest. A sound, thin and fragile, wholly out of place in her sanctuary. The dragon rose, her body uncoiling like a living mountain. Each movement sent small rocks skittering across the cave floor. She followed the sound through passages she knew by heart, her golden eyes adjusting to see the faint traces of heat that all living things carried. There, near the cave entrance, abandoned on the cold stone, lay a human infant. Velcareth stopped. The child could not have been more than a few days old. It wore simple cloth wrappings, already soiled and damp. Its face was red from crying, tiny fists waving at nothing. Beside it lay a small bag containing nutrition packets and a data chip. The dragon's first instinct was to turn away. Human affairs were not her concern. She had withdrawn from the galaxy for good reason. The species that filled the stars now had hunted her kind to near extinction, fearing their power, coveting their territory. Dragons had become myths, stories to frighten children. That suited Velcareth perfectly. The infant's cries grew weaker. She could leave. In an hour, perhaps 2, the cold would claim the child. It would be a mercy compared to what else lived in these mountains. The decision should have been simple, but Velcareth found herself moving closer instead. Her massive head lowered until her eye, larger than the infant's entire body, could examine him properly. She triggered the data chip with a pulse of bioelectric energy that dragons naturally produced. A holographic message appeared, projected in shaking letters. Please. Pirates came. Everyone running. Cannot carry him. They want him for his blood. For experiments. Please hide him. Please. We come back when safe. The message ended. It was not signed. Velcareth doubted anyone would return. She had witnessed enough of galactic society to understand that promises made in panic were rarely kept. The infant had stopped crying. He stared up at her with dark eyes that seemed far too aware for something so small. His tiny hand reached toward her, grasping at air. Velcareth felt something crack inside her chest. It was a feeling she had not experienced in centuries, not since the purge had taken her own offspring. She had sworn never to care for another living thing. Caring led to pain. Connection led to loss. But this child knew nothing of her vows. She made a sound deep in her throat, a rumbling purr that dragons use to calm their young. The infant's face relaxed. His hand stopped waving. For a moment, there was only the sound of his breathing and hers, separated by millions of years of evolution, but somehow synchronized in that cold cave. Foolish. Velcareth whispered to herself in the dragon tongue. Foolish old lizard. But she was already moving. Her tail swept around the child, creating a barrier against the cold. She lifted him with care that surprised even herself, using the smaller digits of her foreclaw to scoop him against her chest, where her body heat was strongest. The nutrition packets in the bag would not last long. She would need to find alternatives. Human infants required specific care, different from dragon hatchlings. She would need to research, to learn, to adapt her environment. These thoughts should have deterred her. Instead, they gave her something she had not possessed in decades: purpose. Very well, small thing, she said, her voice echoing through the chambers. If no one else will claim you, then I shall. You will be Kale. It means unexpected gift in the old tongue. The infant made a small sound, not quite a laugh, but close enough. Velcareth carried him deeper into the cave system, to chambers where warmth rose from thermal vents, and where she could reshape stone with her claws to create a safer nest. As she worked through the night, she occasionally glanced at the child sleeping against her side. She did not yet know that this single choice would shake the foundations of the Galactic Council. She did not know that this abandoned human would become a bridge between species and eras. She knew only that she could not leave him to die. Sometimes the most important decisions are the simplest ones. 15 years passed like the blink of an eye for Velkareth. Yet for Kale, it was an entire lifetime. The young man crouched at the edge of a cliff outside the cave, watching the sunrise paint the valley below in shades of gold and purple. His dark hair, grown long and wild, whipped in the morning wind. He wore clothing stitched from animal hides and salvaged fabric, practical and worn from constant use. "You are thinking too loudly again," Velkaretha's voice rumbled from behind him. Despite her enormous size, she moved with surprising silence when she wished. Kale smiled without turning. "You always say that when you want to know what I'm thinking." "Perhaps." The dragon settled beside him, her presence blocking the wind. "Or perhaps your emotions broadcast like a beacon. 15 years, and you still have not learned to quiet your mind." "That's a human thing," Kale said. "You told me that yourself. We feel everything loudly." Velkareth made a sound that might have been amusement. "Indeed, it is both your greatest weakness and your most surprising strength." They sat in comfortable silence. This was their routine most mornings. Kale had grown up with these lessons, learning to observe, to think, to question everything. Velkareth had taught him to hunt, to survive, to read the ancient texts she had collected over millennia. She had given him knowledge that most humans never encountered. But lately, Kale felt something stirring inside him, a restlessness, a curiosity about the world beyond these mountains. "Tell me again about other humans," he said quietly. Velkaretha's eyes narrowed. "Why this question now?" "I heard ships yesterday, flying over the western ridge." "You heard them too." The dragon did not deny it. "A survey team. They come every few years, mapping resources, checking for settlement potential. They will leave soon." "But what if I went to them? What if I—" "No." The word came out sharp, almost harsh. Velkareth immediately softened her tone. "Kale, you do not understand what waits out there. The Galactic Council, the species who fill the stars, they do not view humans as equals. Your kind are considered newcomers, barely tolerated, young and reckless. Then why do they let humans exist at all? Because humans are useful. Your species adapts quickly, works hard, and asks few questions. The perfect servants of the established powers." Velkaretha's tail swished with agitation. "I did not raise you to become another cog in their machine." Kale stood up, frustration evident in his movements. "You raised me to think, to question. But how can I question a world I've never seen? I've read your texts, learned your history, but I've never met another human. Don't you think that's important?" Velkareth was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried centuries of pain. "I know what it is to lose everything to the galaxy's cruelty. I will not lose you too." The word struck Kale's heart. He moved closer, placing his hand on her scale foreleg. "You won't lose me, but I need to understand where I came from, who my people are." Before Velkareth could respond, a strange sensation washed over Kale. It felt like a vibration in his bones, a humming that seemed to come from deep within the mountain itself. He gasped, stumbling backward. "What is that?" Velkaretha's eyes widened. "You feel it." "Feel what? What's happening?" The dragon moved with sudden urgency, turning toward a section of the cave they rarely visited. "Follow me, quickly." They descended into passages Kale had been forbidden to enter. The humming grew stronger with each step. His skin tingled. His vision seemed sharper, colors more vivid. Finally, they entered a chamber Kale had never seen before. The walls were covered in symbols that glowed with soft blue light. In the center stood a pedestal with a crystalline sphere embedded in its surface. The sphere pulsed in rhythm with the humming Kale felt. "What is this place?" Kale whispered. "Precursor technology," Velkareth said, her voice tight with concern. "Left by a civilization that existed before any current species reached the stars, before even dragons were young." She looked at Kale with something like fear in her ancient eyes. "It should be dormant. It has been dormant for 3,000 years. Kale took a step closer. The humming intensified. The symbols on the walls glowed brighter. "Kale, stop!" But he could not stop. His hand reached out, as if pulled by invisible strings. The moment his fingers touched the sphere, light exploded through the chamber. Images flooded his mind. Star maps, mathematical formulas, warnings in languages he somehow understood, and somewhere, far above in orbit, sensors aboard the survey ship began screaming alerts. Unknown energy signature detected. Precursor technology activated. Sending priority message to Galactic Council. When the light faded, Kale collapsed to his knees, gasping. Vel Kareth was beside him instantly. "What have you done?" she whispered. Kale looked up at her, his eyes still glowing faintly blue. "I don't know, but they're coming, aren't they? Everyone will come now." The dragon's silence was answer enough. The ships arrived within 3 days. Kale watched from the cave entrance as vessels of different shapes and sizes descended through the atmosphere. Some were sleek council cruisers, others were battered freight haulers, and a few bore markings he did not recognize at all. All of them converged on a mountain range where he had lived his entire life. 17 ships, Vel Kareth said from the shadows behind him. More than I anticipated. Word spreads quickly when precursor technology awakens. What do they want? Kale asked, though he already knew the answer. You, the technology, answers, power. The dragon's voice was heavy with resignation. The same things beings always want. A communication drone approached the cave, keeping a respectful distance. A holographic image projected from its surface, showing a human woman in a crisp military uniform. She had sharp features and calculating eyes. "This is Commander Saria Chun of the Galactic Council Survey Fleet. We detected unusual energy signatures originating from this location. We mean no harm. We simply wish to investigate and ensure the safety of any colonists in the area." Kale looked at Vel Kareth. "Should I answer? They already know someone is here. The question is how much we reveal." The dragon's claws scraped against stone. "But I fear that choice has been taken from us." Kale stepped into view of the drone. The holographic woman's eyes widened slightly when she saw him. "My name is Kale. I live here." Commander Chin recovered quickly. "Kale, are you alone? Do you require assistance?" "I'm not alone." Kale took a breath. "And I don't need assistance." As if summoned by his words, Vel Kareth emerged from a cave. Her massive form unfolded into daylight, scales gleaming, wings stretching wide enough to cast shadows across the entire cliff face. The drone wobbled in the air, its sensors likely overloading. Commander Chen's holographic image flickered. When it stabilized, her composure had cracked. That's impossible. Dragons are extinct." "Clearly not," Vel Kareth said, her voice carrying easily across the distance. "Now leave. This world is not yours to claim." But the ships did not leave. Instead, more drones deployed. Ships repositioned. Kale could feel the tension building like a gathering storm. Over the next hours, more species arrived. Representatives from the Archon Collective, insectoid beings whose ships looked like floating hives. The Luminari, creatures of pure energy contained in shimmering suits. Even species Kale had only read about in Vel Kareth's ancient texts. They all wanted the same thing: to understand how Kale had activated technology that had resisted every attempt at interface for millennia. Commander Chin returned, this time in person, landing a shuttle on the plateau below the cave. She climbed the path accompanied by armed guards, though Kale noticed they kept their weapons lowered. Smart. Threatening a dragon was suicide. "We need to talk," Chin said, addressing both Kale and Vel Kareth. "That technology you activated sent a signal across half the sector. Do you understand what that means?" "Trouble," Kale said simply. "More than trouble." Chin pulled up a holographic display. 3 different pirate factions are en route. The Archon Collective has claimed legal rights to any precursor technology found in this sector, and the Council itself is sending a tribunal. She looked directly at Kale. "They're coming to determine what you are and what should be done with you." "Done with me?" Kale felt anger rising. "I'm not a thing to be done with. To them, you might be." Chen's expression softened slightly. "I've reviewed the data. Your genetic markers are unusual, extremely rare. Maybe 1 in 10 billion humans could interface with precursor technology. That makes you valuable. Dangerously valuable. Velkareth moved closer to Kale, a protective gesture that did not go unnoticed. The boy is under my protection. Any who wish to take him must go through me first. That's not a fight anyone wants, Chin said carefully. But I'm trying to help. If the pirates get here first, they'll try to take him by force. If the Archons arrive, they'll claim him as property under salvage laws. Your best chance is to come with me to the orbital station voluntarily and speak to the Council Tribunal, so I can be judged by beings who've already decided I'm a resource. Kale shook his head. No, thank you. Before Chin could respond, alarms blared from her communicator. Her face went pale as she read the incoming data. They're already here. The pirates. They're attacking civilian transports in orbit. She looked up at Kale with urgency. They're using confusion to send strike teams to the surface. To this location. We have maybe 20 minutes. Velkareth's roar shook the mountain. Then let them come. I have defended this cave for 3,000 years. I will not stop now. Kale placed his hand on her leg, feeling the tension in her muscles. Then he looked at Chun. If I go with you, will you protect the colonists? The innocent people up there? That's my job, Chin said. Then I'll go. But Velkareth comes with me. The dragon started protest, but Kale cut her off. You taught me that protecting others matters more than protecting ourselves. Those people up there didn't ask for this. I did when I touched that sphere. Velkareth looked down at the human she had raised, seeing not the infant she had found, but the man he had become. Pride and fear warred in her ancient heart. Very well, she said finally, but we face this together. As pirate ships breached the atmosphere, Kale Velkareth, and Commander Chin prepared to leave the only home Kale had ever known, heading toward an uncertain fate among the stars. The Council Station hung in orbit like a massive ring of steel and light. Kale had never seen anything so large. Ships docked along its outer rim like insects on a wheel, and through the viewports, he could see thousands of beings moving through its corridors. He stood in the central chamber, a vast circular room with seats rising in tiers around him. Representatives from dozens of species filled those seats, their eyes fixed on him with curiosity, suspicion, or greed. Velkareth stood beside him, her presence drawing almost as much attention as the trial itself. At the highest tier sat the Council Arbiters, 5 beings representing the oldest species in known space. They looked down at Kale like judges deciding the fate of an insect. The human designated Kale. The lead arbiter spoke, a crystalline being whose voice echoed like breaking glass. You have activated precursor technology. You possess genetic markers that make you uniquely valuable. The Council must determine your status. Are you a free citizen, a war requiring protection, or a resource to be managed for the greater good? Kale felt Velkareth tense beside him. Commander Chen had warned him this would happen. The Council did not see him as a person yet. He had to make them see. I'm none of those things, Kale said, his voice carrying through the chamber. I'm just someone who touched something he didn't understand. That doesn't make me property. An Archon representative clicked forward, its insectoid body gleaming under the lights. The technology responded to you. That makes you a key. Keys are tools. Tools belong to those who can use them properly. I'm not a tool, Kale said firmly. Then what are you? Another arbiter asked, a being of shifting liquid form. You were raised by a dragon, not by humans. You have no connection to your own species. You exist outside all normal categories. Maybe that's exactly what I am, Kale replied. Something new. Something you don't have a category for yet. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Velkareth rumbled a warning, and the noise subsided. The crystalline arbiter leaned forward. Explain yourself, human. Kale took a breath. This was his moment. You judge species by age, by how long they've been in space. Dragons are ancient, so they were feared and hunted. Humans are young, so we're treated like children who need guidance. But what if age doesn't matter? What if what matters is what you do, not how long you've been doing it? Bold words, the liquid arbiter said, but meaningless. Experience and wisdom come with time. This is universal law. Is it? Kale gestured to Velkareth. She saved me when I was dying. Not because I was valuable. Not because I could offer her anything. She did because she chose to care about a life that wasn't her own. That's not about age or wisdom. That's about character. Velkareth's eyes gleamed with pride, but she remained silent. An elderly Luminari representative spoke, its energy form pulsing with light. The dragon acted on instinct. Maternal programming, perhaps. This proves nothing about human worth. Maternal programming? Velkareth's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. I had already lost my offspring to your ancestors' fear and violence. Every instinct told me to let the human child die. I chose differently. Do not insult that choice by calling it instinct. The chamber fell silent. Few beings dared speak to council members so directly, and fewer still had the presence to make them listen. Before anyone could respond, alarms screamed through the station. Red lights flashed. A security officer rushed to the arbiters, whispering urgently. The crystalline arbiter's voice boomed. We are under attack. Pyre forces have breached the outer docks. All proceedings are suspended. Chaos erupted. Representatives rushed for exits. Guards moved to defensive positions. But Kale felt something else. That same humming from the cave, but stronger now, coming from deep within the station. There's precursor technology here, he said to Velkareth. I can feel it. Of course there is, she replied. The Council has collected precursor artifacts for millennia. They keep them in the secure vaults below us. Commander Chin appeared, weapon drawn. We need to evacuate you both. The pirates are targeting this chamber. But Kale was already moving, drawn by the humming. His feet carried him toward a sealed door marked with warnings in multiple languages. Guards moved to stop him, but when his hand touched the door panel, it opened instantly, recognizing something in his biology. Beyond lay a vault filled with crystalline spheres identical to the one in the cave, and they were all beginning to glow. Kale, stop. Velkareth called, but he was already reaching for the nearest sphere. The moment he touched it, information flooded his mind. Not just star maps this time. Warnings, coordinates, images of darkness consuming stars. He gasped, stumbling backward into Chen's arms. They're coming! The old enemy. The Void Swarm. That's what the precursors were warning about. The spheres pulsed brighter, projecting holographic images throughout the vault. Images of massive creatures, living ships that consumed everything in their path. Images of civilizations falling, and a timeline showing the swarm's current location at the galaxy's edge, moving inward toward council space. Velkareth's eyes widened in recognition and horror. I know these creatures. The old text spoke of them. They were the reason dragons became warriors instead of scholars. We fought them once millennia ago. The crystalline arbiter had followed them, its usual composure shattered. This cannot be. The Void Swarm is legend. Myth. Myths with coordinates and arrival times. Kale said, still processing the data. They'll reach the outer colonies in 6 months. Council space in 2 years. Explosions rocked the station as pirates breached another section. But suddenly, that conflict seemed very small. The Arbiter looked at Kale with new understanding. You can read the warnings, interpret the data. You are not a resource to be managed. You are a translator we desperately need. Kale met the Arbiter's eyes. Then maybe you should stop treating me like property and start treating me like a person who can help. The council chamber had transformed from a courtroom into a war room within hours. Species that had been arguing about Kale's fate now argued about survival instead. Holographic displays showed the Void Swarm's projected path, a crimson tide spreading across the galaxy map. Kale stood at the center, exhausted but focused. He had spent the past 3 hours translating precursor warnings, each revelation more dire than the last. The swarm moves through dark space between stars, he explained, pointing to the display. That's why sensors can't detect them until they're already here. They don't use conventional travel methods. An Archon commander clicked its mandibles in frustration. Then how do we fight something we cannot see coming? The precursors found a way, Kale said. They built weapons, sealed them in hidden locations. The spheres contained the coordinates. And the dragons knew of these weapons, Velkareth added, her voice heavy with old memories. We guarded some of them, before the Council's ancestors decided we were more dangerous than the darkness we fought. The crystalline arbiter had the grace to look uncomfortable. Ancient history. We must focus on the present threat. The past and present are connected. Velkareth said coldly, You feared dragon power and hunted us to extinction. Now that same power is needed again. Ironic, is it not? Kale placed a hand on Velkareth's leg, a calming gesture. We don't have time for blame. The swarm scouts are already in the outer rim. They'll hit the mining colonies first. Commander Chin studied the tactical display. Our fleets are positioned for territorial defense, not coordinated assault. It would take months to organize a proper response through council bureaucracy. We don't have months, Kale said, but we have something better than bureaucracy. He looked around the room at the various species representatives. We have individuals who can choose to act without waiting for permission. A Luminari representative pulsed with agitation. You suggest we abandon protocol? Ignore chain of command? I suggest you do what Velkareth did for me, Kale said. Make the choice that needs to be made, even when no one tells you to make it. Silence fell over the chamber. Then Commander Chin smiled. You want to form a volunteer fleet. Bypass the council entirely. Exactly. Anyone willing to fight comes. We use precursor weapons, dragon knowledge, and human tactics. Kale pulled up information from the spheres. The precursors left detailed weaknesses in the swarm's biology. They can be killed, but requires coordination and speed. Things the council doesn't do well. This is madness, an arbiter protested. Untested weapons. No unified command structure. No proper planning. Velkareth laughed, a sound like thunder rolling through mountains. That is precisely why it might work. The swarm expects organized resistance, military formations, predictable patterns. Give them chaos instead. Over the next week, something unprecedented happened. Ships from dozens of species began arriving at a rendezvous point near the precursor weapon cache Kale had located. Not official military vessels, but volunteers, merchants with armed freighters, colony defense forces, even a few pirate crews seeking redemption or profit. Kale found himself leading them, translating precursor weapon systems, teaching dragon tactical philosophy that Velkareth had taught him. He felt completely unprepared, but Commander Chin reminded him of something important. Leaders don't need to have all the answers, she said. They need to help others find their answers. When the Void Swarm Scouts finally arrived at the outer colonies, they found not panicked civilians, but a ready defense. Kale's volunteer fleet struck from unexpected angles, using weapons the swarm had not encountered in millennia. Velkareth flew alongside human fighters, her ancient combat instincts proving devastatingly effective. The battle lasted 3 days. When it ended, the swarm scouts were destroyed, but more importantly, the galaxy had witnessed something new. Different species working together, without council approval. Humans fighting alongside dragons. Innovation defeating ancient evil through cooperation rather than hierarchy. The council had no choice but to acknowledge what had happened. Humans were granted full member status, no longer considered newcomers. More significantly, the council's entire structure began to shift. Species were no longer ranked solely by age, but by contribution and character. Kale stood once more in the council chamber, but this time not as a defendant. The arbiters offered him positions of power, advisory roles, military command. He declined them all. Instead, he returned to Hesperides Prime with Velkareth, the cave where she had found him became something else entirely. An academy, a place where beings from any species could come to learn, to train, to understand that strength came not from age or power, but from the willingness to protect those who could not protect themselves. Ships arrived daily, bringing students, refugees, the lost and abandoned from across the galaxy. Kale welcomed them all, just as Velkareth had welcomed him. On a quiet evening, months after the battle, Kale sat with Velkareth at their familiar cliff edge, watching the sunset. "Do you regret it?" he asked. "Finding me that day? All the trouble I've caused." Velkareth was quiet for a long moment. I spent 3,000 years alone, waiting to die, believing my purpose ended when my kind fell. Then I found a crying infant who should have meant nothing to me. She looked at him with eyes that had seen civilizations rise and fall. You gave me something I thought lost forever. Not just purpose, but hope. You gave me everything, Kale said, simply, life, knowledge, a reason to be better than circumstances demanded. No, Velkara corrected gently. I gave you a chance. You chose what to do with it. That is the difference between humans and most other species. You do not accept the limitations others place on you. Below them, new students were arriving. A young Archon who had lost its hive. A human child orphaned by pirate raids. A Luminari who questioned its people's isolation. All of them seeking something they could not find in the rigid structures of the galaxy. Kale smiled. I suppose we should go welcome them. In a moment, Velkara said, let an old dragon enjoy the sunset first. After all, I have a legacy now, and legacies are worth savoring. They sat together in comfortable silence, a dragon and a human she had chosen to save, watching the day end and a new era begin.